A chilling question echoes across every newsroom. What happens when a wartime commander declares he will willingly leave the throne the moment the guns fall silent, and every ally, rival, and citizen wonders whether the promise hides a hidden agenda, a desperate bargaining chip, or a genuine yearning for peace that could reshape an entire nation? The air seems to crackle with uncertainty, as the scent of rain-soaked ash mingles with the distant thud of artillery, and an uneasy silence follows every whispered speculation. Earlier, the world learned that the Ukrainian president answered a bold query with an unexpected affirmation. In a candid interview, he stated, "If we end the war with Russia, yes, I am ready to step down." The declaration split observers into two camps. One group believes the leader truly intends to forego any future campaign, perhaps heeding a quiet plea from Western partners. The other camp argues the comment is a calculated performance, meant to showcase humility while masking a deeper strategy to cling to power. They point to recent attacks on anti-corruption bodies, sanctions aimed at opponents, and massive social spending packages, measures they claim serve political survival more than the war effort. The president's words, however, stop short of a definitive refusal to run. He said only, "I am ready not to run." That subtle phrasing leaves a wide gap between outright resignation and a simple option. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the presidential office continues to tighten its grip, drafting a next-year budget that resembles a pre-election playbook. Critics note the contrast. Outwardly, he appears to abandon ambition. Inwardly, the machinery of power hums louder than ever. What will happen when the ceasefire finally arrives? Will the promised elections be called immediately, as the president now claims, or will the underlying power structures keep the nation on a longer, unseen campaign trail? The next revelation could turn hope into reality, or into a new front of political intrigue. Previously we noted that President Zelensky repeatedly claimed he would call elections as soon as a ceasefire begins, a stance that contrasts with earlier statements that elections could only follow a stable peace. What if the sound of artillery quieting out becomes the cue for a nationwide ballot? The idea rattles diplomats, sparks rumors in cramped embassies, and leaves citizens wondering whether the next headline will announce a vote instead of a truce. Speakers in the presidential office had long stressed that a ceasefire alone does not dissolve the illegal status imposed on the country, and therefore the ban on voting would stay in place. They argued that only a durable, lasting peace could legitimize a poll. Now the narrative has flipped. Elections could be scheduled immediately after hostilities cease. This shift adds weight to analysts who claim the president's team is already mobilizing for a campaign. It also hints that a ceasefire may indeed materialize in the near future. American news outlet Axios released a series of excerpts from Zelensky's extensive interview on the Axios show, aired on Friday. The brief note explained that the Ukrainian president talked with a journalist after delivering a speech at the UN General Assembly and meeting world leaders, including US President Donald Trump. The most striking moment was Zelensky's answer to a question about his post-war role. "Will you stay on as president in peacetime, or will you say you have served enough and step down?" the reporter asked, clearly probing whether Zelensky would seek another term. "If we finish the war with Russia." "Yes, I am ready not to run," Zelensky replied. "A ceasefire gives us the chance to hold elections." He added, "I told Mr. Trump that if a ceasefire is reached, we can use that window. I can signal the parliament, and perhaps, though it will be hard, constitutional provisions could allow us to organize a vote." The host followed up, asking whether Zelensky would push the election idea tomorrow if President Putin agreed to a 3-month, 6-month, or any other truce. Zelensky answered, "Yes, because in that period Ukraine, Russia, and the United States must find a way to truly end this war. I am not opposed if people want to see a leader granted a fresh mandate. I am ready to step aside, because that is not my goal." These statements spread quickly through state outlets such as Ukrinform and through channels seen as close to the president's camp, like the 1+1 TV network. Private bloggers and commentators, who usually echo the president's inner circle, were more hesitant to weigh in, yet the discourse about possible elections exploded across social media. Two camps emerged. One group took Zelensky at his word, believing he truly intends to forego another term, citing former ambassador to the US Valery Chaley, who said on Radio NV, "I heard President Zelensky. I trust his words about not running again. He said, I came for one term. That's it." The opposing camp argues the comments are a PR maneuver, meant to silence criticism and to counter accusations that recent actions, crackdowns on anti-corruption bodies, sanctions on opponents, massive social program spending, serve election building rather than defense needs. They claim Zelensky's "I will not run" line is meant to show he cares only about defeating the aggressor, while the administration quietly prepares a campaign infrastructure. Inside the presidential office, power consolidation continues. Budget plans for next year resemble a pre-election rally, and talks about a ceasefire are paired with discussions on how Parliament might draft the legal route for a vote. Zelensky has not categorically ruled out running. He said he is ready not to go, a subtle but significant distinction. Politically, the more consequential message is his repeated promise that elections will be announced the moment a ceasefire takes hold, a stark reversal from earlier denials. If a ceasefire materializes soon, will the country rush to the polls, or will the leadership use the lull to tighten its grip? The answer may shape Ukraine's future as much as the outcome of the war itself. In the previous discussion, the topic revolved around the potential for elections in Ukraine, where President Zelensky stated that parliamentary members might find a way to hold elections, but only after a ceasefire is established. The moderator pressed him about whether he would promote the election idea if Putin were to agree to a ceasefire of 3 or 6 months. Zelensky, in a candid remarks, discussed the urgency of a ceasefire, emphasizing that during this time, Ukraine, Russia, and the United States must collaboratively discover a path toward ending the conflict. Interestingly, he suggested that if the people desired a leader for a new mandate, he would not hesitate to step aside. "I am ready to leave because that is not my goal," he stated. This comment was echoed by various media outlets, including state-run ones like Ukrinform and others close to the presidential office. However, private bloggers and commentators, typically aligned with Zelensky's circle, responded with hesitance to his statements about potential elections in Ukraine. Discussions about his words ignited heated debates, revealing two main factions, one firmly believing in Zelensky's sincerity and the other skeptical of his honesty. Among the believers was Valery Chaley, former ambassador to the U.S., who expressed trust in Zelensky's statement about not seeking re-election. He said, "I came for one term. That's it. It's time to put a period there," Chaley noted, interpreting Zelensky's comments as reaffirming his 2019 electoral pledge. Critics, however, countered that Zelensky was being evasive and was far from giving up on another presidential run, likening him to Trump with ever-shifting plans. Just last week, at a meeting with the Servant of the People faction, Zelensky told Axios reporters that he wouldn't run again if the war with Russia concluded. Anticipation brews among political observers for further comments from key figures in his party and civil society regarding his supposed intent to step back from the race. The question now lingers, with rising tensions and conflicting narratives, what will Zelensky do next? Will his claims of not seeking re-election hold up against the pressures of power and ambition? Summary: the narrative unfolds around President Zelensky's surprising remarks about his potential future in office. Despite declaring his openness to stepping down, many speculate that his intentions are fueled by a desire to maintain power amid ongoing turmoil. This backdrop intensifies as speculation mounts regarding his true plans for upcoming elections. It seems certain factions in the West propagate the narrative that Zelensky has no intention of ending the conflict. They argue that his desire to cling to power supersedes the war's resolution. To counter this, the president proposed two key points: first, that elections would be held immediately following any declaration of ceasefire, and second, he expressed his willingness to abstain from future elections, boldly stating, "I do not cling to my position. My only focus is repelling aggression." Yet, within the presidential office, no indication suggests that Zelensky plans to vacate his position anytime soon. On the contrary, a significant push is underway to tighten control over all political and economic processes. This surge in governance is strategically timed for the expected elections, should the war conclude, or to ensure stability is maintained, even if the conflict drags on. What's more intriguing is that Zelensky's emphasis on announcing elections once a ceasefire is reached strongly suggests he is preparing for a forthcoming electoral campaign. Are we on the verge of a political evolution just as the war may reach a turning point? As tensions ebb and flow, the world watches closely, anticipating both decisive action and unexpected twists. Will Zelensky truly step away, or is this just a calculated move to consolidate his hold in a precarious landscape? Previously, he told Axios reporters he would not run again if the war finally ends, and the public waited for Ermakay's comment, for invitations from the Servant of the People faction, and for reactions on a journalist's Facebook page. What if the man who survived artillery fire suddenly whispers, "I will step down"? The night air smelled of burnt diesel, the distant rumble of mortars echoing like distant drums. Zelensky's eyes glinted with a mixture of fatigue and resolve. He claimed his heart belonged only to the battlefield's end, not to a second term. Andrei Zolotarev, a seasoned political analyst, argues this promise clashes with the president's hidden agenda. He believes the statement was a strategic shield, meant to silence a fresh wave of Western criticism. The United States had pressed for clarity about upcoming elections, and Zelensky answered with a carefully timed line. Inside Kiev, whispers turned into a chorus of intrigue. Zolotarev suggests the interview bought the president precious time, a pause to rearrange his domestic chessboard. He envisions a new anti-corruption vertical, tightened like a fist around power, free from shakings. Opposition voices and skeptical media may soon feel the squeeze. A tantalizing question lingers: is this genuine surrender to peace, or a masterstroke to consolidate control? The curtain falls on a city humming with bureaucratic rustle, waiting for the next move. Previously, analysts dissected Zelensky's interview, exposing possible motives behind his step-down claim, and hinting at a looming power reshuffle. Now the discussion sharpens: could the president's words be a calculated answer to Western pressure while masking deeper ambitions? The scent of fresh coffee mingles with the metallic tang of legislation being drafted behind closed doors. Critics point to recent headlines accusing Zelensky of usurping authority, then note his sudden pivot to leaving office. Supporters, like former Ambassador Valery Chaly, repeat Zelensky's promise, declaring, "One term, that's all, end of story." Their confidence fuels a narrative that the leader truly wishes to retire after victory. Yet other voices, including a close source to the president's inner circle, argue the comment was a response to harsh overseas articles, not a genuine retirement plan. The media storm continues, painting Zelensky as either a war-torn hero or a shrewd politician. He pushes anti-corruption probes, rushes large social payments into the next year's budget, and lifts travel bans for the youth. Are these populist gestures meant to solidify his base before a potential election? The final puzzle remains: will a ceasefire trigger immediate elections, as Zelensky recently suggested, or will the power structure tighten, awaiting an inevitable vote? The streets echo with distant sirens, and the audience holds its breath, yearning for the next revelation.